No, 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 no.
Netflix Cowboy Bebop represents everything that is wrong with modern Hollywood today. Whether it's the brainless and uninspired creators that pass for writers and directors, the greedy money-hungry corporations that fund them, and the preachy self-righteous beliefs of Twitter folk that inevitably sink into the art form. The combination of all this has led to a surge of remakes slash reboots of beloved IPs and franchises that nobody asks for. And I guess now, since they've explored every possible avenue of entertainment, next up is Japan and its collection of diverse and memorable manga and anime, almost to show us that no one cult classic is safe from that greedy and unimaginative grasp. But with the recent release of Netflix adaptation of Cowboy Bebop, show us all they did. That if you take a thought-provoking story, a gorgeous cinematic world featuring a cast of vibrant, cynical, and likable characters, and then place it in the hands of greedy corporate giants like Netflix, while at the same time spearheaded by people who don't understand the charm and love of the anime, what you ultimately get is a cheap, uninspired copy, only preserving the spirit of the original anime, only in name, while at the same time deconstructing and spitting on the core themes and ideals of identity, friendship, stagnation, acceptance, and nihilism that garnered the massive and loyal fan base in the 2 decades since it was released. But Menace, society's misunderstood soul, doesn't the attempt to adapt such a difficult and beloved show at least warrant any sort of praise for the effort? And well, dear viewer, my response would be if you were to order a well done quarter chicken meal at your local Nando's, but what you get in return is a dull, overcooked mess of a turd, will you offer praise for the effort and not the results? But before we get to this heaping pile of crap that is this Netflix adaptation, what is Cowboy Bebop all about? Well, Cowboy Bebop is a story about a ragtag of misfits and their bounty hunting adventures across space. The show is episodic in nature, and as such we're introduced to characters from all walks of life. With the show only providing mere fragments of our main trio's backstory, it allowed us, the audience, to find meaning to the life of the episodic characters we meet along the way, and that of our main cast. All of this was masterfully done in a 20-minute time span, and as such the storytelling was tight and efficient, making it easily digestible. Basically, the show treated its audience intelligently, didn't waste our time, and just gave us a purely relaxing, fun, and thought-provoking experience. So when news broke out that we would get only 10 episodes, with each episode receiving about 50 minutes, I was a bit skeptical to say the least. How are they going to adapt those short intimate stories in a longer runtime without feeling empty and boring? And well, they couldn't. The padding of runtime to somewhat stretch out the episodes is very much apparent here, supported by wacky cartoonish dialogue, awful stale Marvel humor, unnecessary screen time for irrelevant characters, and the most egregious thing of all was the unwarranted extended backstories of beloved main characters. For starters, the dialogue is horrendous and borderline laughable, which I guess was the point, but all it does is undermine the Bebop crew and turns them into caricatures of their former selves. Yeah, the original 90s anime had some form of humor, but it was subtle and more under the nose in its approach than here. And as such, as much as they were simply fictional characters, they were portrayed with a level of realism that made them feel relatable and likable. Here the dialogue is forced and overly dramatic for my liking. Feels more like a drama screenplay rather than a living, breathing world with actual people. This brings me neatly along to the tone of this adaptation. Cowboy Bebop is a sci-fi western noir by heart. This means we are given dark, gritty, and somber atmospheres that set a perfect backdrop for the thought-provoking story and our morally ambiguous characters. But what we have here is a rather bright, colorful, intimate atmosphere in comparison. That is a complete opposite of what Shinichiro Watanabe was aiming for with his original work. As such, the moments of levity or humor which serve to offset the dark and greedy setting are not present because we're given a weird mix of Seinfeld and Scott Pilgrim. The lack of juxtaposition harms the core tone of the show, making it hard to feel anything when our characters go from a light to serious tone from episode to episode. Because, well, it all feels the same in the end. Finally, the worst offender in this absolute disaster is the characters, who in turn will either make or break the show. The performances range from cringe to good. John Cho's performance, while not terrible, was not particularly great either. He simply tried his best to portray Spike, and well, that's not good enough. All the charisma, stoicism, and cynicism has been lost in translation with Spike here. The iconic lines that were delivered in the anime are delivered in a boring, monotone way here.
Yep, and the number 2 nozzle won't work either.
What? Are you for real? We can't live
Well,
without them. I knew I
whatever
should've fucked you.
happens,
I'm only 18.
happens.
The elders, Susie. They're gonna say I've done the right thing. We need to put the fear into those Neptune savages.
Whatever happens, happens.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Mustafa Shakir's performance as Jack Black was easily the best and closest thing to representing our favorite running rock. The mannerism, tone of voice, and overall portrayal was spot on. Jet Black has been fully realized in a live-action setting. Next up, we have Dianella Pineda as Faye Valentine. Now listen, I'm sure she's a lovely actor, but Faye was never meant to be this snarky and obnoxious. She feels more like a comic relief rather than a resourceful, intelligent badass who used their sexuality to gain an advantage over her male counterparts. Oh yeah, by the way, she's lesbian. Need to tick that diversity box, I guess. Lastly, rounding off the main cast is Julia and Vicious, who was sparingly used in the original as they form the love triangle that represents Spike's tragic past. As such, both Julia and Vicious had this level of mystery and intrigue surrounding them, in the process making them more compelling as a result. But in the Netflix adaptation, for some inexplicable reason, they thought it was a fantastic idea to give them more screen time and flesh them out. But what this ultimately did was remove the mystique of their characters and in turn made Spike's past even less interesting and not worth investing in, to be honest. So okay, what boils my piss now is how the kind and caring Julia, who represented an escape for Spike's violent nature, has now become the beacon of hope against the oppressive male patriarchy. I love how now in the show, years after seeing Spike, her first words are of bitterness and hate, even though the man had barely survived a deadly encounter with the assassin Vicious, and had to disappear to protect both you and his own life. Plus, not to mention the fact of the matter is, that this relationship was a flimsy one to begin with. You only hit it off with the man a day before he supposedly died. But no, we live in an age where men are always in the wrong despite having valid reasons to dispute that. Okay, with that out of the way, I think the shining beacon in this dark and bleak mess is Yoko Kanno's beautiful and cinematic musical scores. It's very much apparent they realized the importance of having a strong musical foundation for the show, just like the anime. And yeah, the cinematography is not gonna get any Oscar nomination, but it was competently shot and not a complete eyesore. In the end, Netflix Cowboy Bebop is a ham-fisted attempt at making a remake/reboot of a popular IP to gain the attention of the core fanbase to bolster its own success. Because had this been called anything else besides Cowboy Bebop, I doubt it would garner any press or social media presence for its level of mediocrity. So if you want to see a well-shot, tightly written story and a non-preachy show, I suggest you pick up the original anime, which funny enough came out a week before the show's release. Anyway, farewell my fellow outcasts, and peace.